Hello, today we're going to talk about how to represent qualitative data in a graph. So data are facts or information that we learn from an investigation or from a survey, and there are two basic types. So qualitative data are descriptive words or categories, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So these are things that we have data about that come from categories like colors or types of animals or just general descriptive words, as opposed to quantitative data, which is actual numbers and measurements. So we're going to talk about this more in Science 8, and you can use line graphs or scatter plots, sometimes even bar graphs for quantitative data. But we're really going to focus on using bar graphs for qualitative data today, and we'll talk briefly about pie charts too. So a bar graph looks like this. So you can see that we have a title here that is really clear and tells us what's in the graph. We have some labels on the y and x-axis, and we also have some additional units in a scale. We know that this is counting students, and we know that we're counting by 2 for every of these bars. And so you can see that the most students in the classroom had June birthdays. So 10 students, since this bar goes all the way up to 10, had birthdays in June. And the next most looks to be May and October. Both are tying for 8 students. So this is a really quick, easy way to see all the data. Instead of having to look at all the numbers at once, we can kind of immediately visually see which students had which birthdays and which birthday months were less common, like August in this case. So in order to make a bar graph, you need to start by thinking of what's in your graph and deciding on a title. So a lot of times we'll choose a testable question, or we need to just make sure we cover what is in the y-axis and what is in the x-axis, the horizontal axis and the vertical axis, in other words. So in this case, our title is Birthday of Students, because that includes the information here and the information here by month, which kind of puts it into an organization that we understand. If we just say birthday of students, we might have imagine that our data is going to have it broken down by day, and that's not really what we have. So you're trying to make the title as clear as possible. Again, a testable question would have been a good choice too. So if we had chosen a testable question like which is the most common month for student birthdays in this class, then you would still include all the information that we needed to in the title. Then we are going to actually draw the vertical and the horizontal axes, those lines up and across. And then we're going to write the names of our categories along the bottom axis. So this is our labels. Make sure that we have actual descriptions there, because otherwise we really don't know what we're measuring. In a bar graph that's got qualitative data, there usually isn't any real reason to choose one category first. Once we've got our categories along the bottom, then we need to label the vertical axis. So in this case, it's number of students, but you could have days, you could have length or something else. This is going to be an actual number. So even in qualitative data, we still do have numbers along here. Otherwise, a graph wouldn't really be the best choice. Then we're going to have a scale. So in this case, the greatest number that we ever had of students was 10. So our scale needed to just go between 0 and 10, and in this case, they gave it a little bit of extra room at the top. Then we had to decide what to count by. So counting by 2, since we're going from 0 up to 10, counting by 2 really worked well, but we could have counted by 5 and had a 0 and then a 5 and then a 10, or we could have counted by 3s and just gone up to 12 and then just had this one in the middle. It's really up to you. We just have to make sure that we cover all of the information. So As long as you've decided that there will be room for the greatest and the least numbers shown, and it's really easy to see all your data, then you can count by whatever you would like. And then you're going to finally draw a tower to show the total for each item. So you go above the label. In this case, we're going to June. And above June, we're going to make the tower as tall as the number of students had birthdays in that month. So we went all the way up to 10 and we draw a line back down, and it really makes it clearer if you color it in, but the main thing is to make sure this is neat. So your tower should be very clearly ending at the number that you want it to. And that's pretty much it. So let's do another example before we summarize and kind of wrap this up. So if we had an example, let's say we had the favorite pet of different number of students. This is definitely qualitative data because we know that there's no real reason that cats have to be first. We could have put birds first and then gone in alphabetical order. In this case, I'm going to guess that they're probably in the order of popularity because I'm guessing not a whole lot of students are choosing fish as their favorite pet. So let's say that in a class of 20 students, the number of students who picked cat as their favorite animal was 5. And then the number of students who picked dog, it was tied, was also 5. Number of students who picked bird was 3, and we're up to 13. And number of students who picked rodent were 3. And then there were 3 who chose lizard and 1 who chose a fish. So now let me just make sure we have a total of 20 students, and each student had a favorite pet. I can actually make Excel make a graph for me, and all I have to do is highlight it, and then I can click on this Insert tab, and then I'm going to click on the type of chart I want. So I want a bar graph, so I'm going to click on this or on this, and I'm going to choose the I'm going to look for more column charts. So I'd really like basically this. That looks pretty good. What I'm looking for is the information that I'd like, and I want really straightforward bars. In this case, they're calling it a column chart, but it's the same thing. I'm choosing that one because it's colorful. So I'm going to change my title because that's one of the important things that we need. So if you'll recall, my title needs to capture what information I have in my graph, what I'm measuring along both axes. So in this case, I'm going to say, what were the favorite pets of students in Mrs. C's class? So that is a testable question that could be my title. I already have number of students, and I'm actually thinking about switching my graph type because I would like to have my labels at the bottom, not along this. I'd like to have them underneath each tower. So I'm going to look through here, and I'm looking for a chart that has that. So let's do this one instead, even though it's not colorful. Okay, so now I have the labels along the bottom, and I'm missing a label here. I just have numbers. I don't have a label. So I'm going to click this button, and it's going to tell me things that I could add. And one thing that I want to add is an axis title. So as this comes up here, I'm going to click on it. And if you double click or if you just type in it, it'll let you change it. So I'm going to change it to be number of students. Okay, so if we look back through, A good acronym to help us remember what we need is SULTAN, and SULTAN stands for scale, units, label, title, and then accurate and neat are the two things that we want to make sure our graph is. These are the things that we need to include. So, do we have a scale? If we look back, we do have a scale right here. We're counting by 1, so that's fine. Do we have a set of units? And that's more common with quantitative data, but in this case, we still have what we're measuring. We have that it's number of students. And if there were special units like kilograms or meters, then we'd include that as well. And do we have also labels? So we already talked about how we included units, but do we also have labels? And the answer is yes, we also have a label down here. Well, actually we have a label, but we need to actually update it. So we're going to say this is, we highlight it, the favorite pet, and we do have labels on all of our towers. That's great. And then down there here, this, let's go ahead and delete it because we don't really need that in a bar graph. So then finally we have a title, and we do have a title as well. We went to the effort of putting that in. So our bar graph is then done, and we just have to make sure that it's accurate, including the data that we had, and it's neat. And the really nice thing about using a Excel program like this is that the computer's going to make it very neat for you. But if I wanted to make my own bar graph, that would be pretty simple too. So I'm going to make a bar graph of an imaginary egg drop. So we dropped some eggs in different structures, and there were different things that happened. So let's say it broke 25 times, it survived 10 times, and it cracked but didn't break 3 times. Okay, so we're going to make our graph. So I'm going to start by making my chart. So remember the acronym SULTAN. I'm going to start by drawing in my axes. And usually scientists and mathematicians will put little arrows at the top and the bottom to show that these could go on if we wanted them to. And then I'm going to put in a title. So if I look back at our information here, I know that I have information about what happened to our egg during the egg drop. So I'm going to write a question just like that. So our question could be, and again, we're going to try to make it neat. When I'm writing on the computer, it's not going to be super, super neat, but I'm going to do my best. What happened to the egg when dropped in our structure? I need to make sure that I was specific enough that you can tell just by reading the title what's going to be in my graph. Along the bottom, I'm going to put my categories. So in this case, there was broke, and there was survived, and again, this is horribly messy, but you will do better, and cracked. Then it wouldn't hurt to put a general category all the way over along the bottom. Not every single graph maker does this, but we're going to try to go above and beyond and do that. So we're going to say what happened to egg. Okay, then I'm going to think about my scale. So since my scale needs to include the least number and the greatest number, I am going to go ahead and start with 0. It generally is a good way of making sure that your graph is really clear and fair to start always at 0. And then I'm going to go all the way up to 25. So I could, if this went, say, to 23 or an awkward number, I can always go more than 25, but I probably don't want to make it go all the way up to 100 because then my bars will be much shorter than the space I have. So I'm going to just go ahead and go up to 25. So I could count by 5s, 5, 10, and I might have to redo this, 15, 20. My goal is to make sure that they are even. So if you're working on graph paper, that's really ideal because then you can count your number of squares. But as you can see, you can do this even without graph paper. But if I thought maybe my information was not spaced out evenly, then I could rewrite this and fix it till it looks nice and neat. This looks fairly even to me. Again, remember, neatness and accuracy are things that I am looking for in your graph. Now that I've got the scale, now I need my units, and what I'm measuring in is number of times. And now I have my units. I also have my labels because that is a label for my y-axis, and I also have my labels for my x-axis. So I have my scale, I have my units, I have my labels, I have my title. So the last thing I need is my actual data, and it needs to be accurate and neat. So the number of eggs that broke were 25. So I like to start by going across and making a line. And then I'm going to draw down as neatly as I can, and I can fill it in. Then I'm going to find my next piece of information, and I'm going to switch colors because it's fun. So number of eggs that survived was 10. So I'm going to go up to 10. So if I go across, you don't need to draw these little lines, but sometimes it helps to use a ruler to find across where you should line up. And then I'm going to, again, fill in my tower since it goes up to 10, since there were 10 times the egg survived. And then finally, there were times that the egg cracked but did not break. So I'm going to change to green, and then I'm going to go up to 3. So since I don't have a line for 3, I need to be very careful in estimating. It wouldn't be fair to be just right below the 5 because that would be more like a 4.5. And it wouldn't be fair to be exactly in between because that would be more like a 2.5. So I want to think and kind of maybe even plan 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope. Let's try that again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That looks about right. So I'm going to go across from my 3. And again, a ruler would be the perfect tool for this job. And then I'm going to draw my bar across and my line down. And also, again, this is one more piece of evidence that doing this on graph paper is just a little bit easier. Then I'm going to clean up my bar graph, make sure that there are no extra lines that could make this unclear. So look back over SULTAN. Do I have a scale? Check. Do I have units? Yes. Do I have labels? Yes. Do I have a title? Yes. Is it accurate? Let's see, 25, 10, 3. 25, 10, 3. Got it. Neat? I've seen better. But hopefully it's readable. Maybe I'll fix this V here and try to fix this R. So in summary, I just want to play you this little video of SULTAN to help you remember.
SULTAN, scale, unit, label, title, make it accurate and neat. SULTAN, scale, unit, label, title, make it accurate and neat.
All right, so hopefully you can remember now how to make a graph.